Making headlines for this week of May 22nd, Greek power play. Amid confusion over Greek debt, is the Greek government suddenly a new major force in geopolitics? Wave of indignation. More Canadians wonder what it will take to remove a corrupt leader from a corrupt government and a corrupt system of governance. On Golden Pond, regardless of one's global perspective, a case can be made for having some security with the metal. And a target for healthy food. Supermarket chain sees the trend and signals to customers its decision to follow.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. Without any significant headline story to lead with this evening, we come back to the familiar deadline facing Greece and, indeed, the continent of Europe. The trick, as I think I am perceiving it at this moment, is that with each approaching deadline, we need to try to read between the lines as to what is happening with Greece and then try to put this event into context with other relevant events within the geopolitical and geoeconomic arenas. It's not exactly an easy task to do. According to Agence France-Presse via the Himalayan Times in an article on May 12th, the schedule of repayment of debts by Greece to the IMF lists about 14 dates between the middle of May and the middle of August. 6 payments alone are scheduled during the month of June, with the next payment due on June 5th. Of €302.5 million to the IMF, followed by approximately €3.5 billion in Treasury bills on June the 12th, and also a €340 million payment to the IMF on that same day. Just those 3 payments alone is perhaps enough to put fear into European bankers and perhaps market speculators that Greece will not be able to come through. The trick, again, is to try to see through the veil of what the bankers and the media are wanting us to believe and try to get to the picture of what is really going on. And we may not get to that truth until the global banking cabal is finally and completely shaken down. A New York Times article by Susie Hansen on May 20th describes the story facing Greece and Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis as being a finance minister fit for a Greek tragedy. Hansen writes that Yanis Varoufakis knows when he'll go. I'm not going to humiliate myself, and I'm not going to become compromised in terms of principles and in terms of logic. I'll be damned if I will accept another package of economic policies that perpetuate this same crisis. This is not what I was elected for. He would resign, he said, rather than push the Greek people deeper into economic despair. It's not good for Europe, and it's not good for Greece. Varoufakis is playing the game on a global scale that citizens of most countries do not have the courage to do in their own private lives, and that is to face down their own bank and present them with information that one knows exactly the scam and the lies that have been committed against them. Greece is calling out those lies. The media and the bankers are attempting to push Greece back into line, thus perhaps discrediting the Syriza party in front of its voters, and perhaps hopefully to discredit Varoufakis. Varoufakis is not playing, however, because he knows how criminally fraudulent the bailout loans have been and how the benefits of the loans have gone to bankers and other elites, while the punishment of repayment is forced upon the much poorer general population. The rise of the Syriza party has been an unpleasant thorn in the side of the EU banking union. Hansen writes that Syriza's victory, however, threatened an ominous evolution for the Eurozone. The rise of a radical party in the region has frightened conservative and centrist European leaders, facing anger at home amid declining living standards. And while most of Syriza's officials, including its Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, want to stay in the Eurozone, as much as a third of Syriza's membership would be willing to abandon the euro to avoid more austerity. It's an outcome more likely than ever before, and its consequences are frightening and unknowable. Hansen, in describing the situation as frightening, appears to be obviously not well informed in the potential solutions and the potential consequences of a Greek exit from the monetary union. Essentially, a Greek exit is expected to expose the complete house of cards and how all debts are fraudulent and created out of thin air. It threatens to expose the people and institutions within this scam. The consequences are not frightening to those who understand what is going on. What might be more of a concern, however, is the extent to which the global banking cabal might be willing to go to prevent these truths from being known. This, to me, is the unknowable. Hansen continues, 4 months into his political tenure, Varoufakis is at the center of a contest that could determine the entire continent's future. No deal between Greece and the domineering center of European authority has been reached. Varoufakis finds himself struggling to hold on to his principles, what he calls the red lines that prevent him, in his mind, from becoming like every other Greek politician before him. Those ideals risk bringing more hardship to Greece, but Varoufakis has staked his academic integrity on a particular economic and moral critique of the crisis. To what, to whom, does he presently owe his ultimate responsibility? The mainstream media is attempting to corner Varoufakis to get him to commit. In this interview with Channel 4 News, the news anchor is attempting to get him to commit to a yes or no, but what it comes down to are his very final comments at the end.
Paul Mason and Yanis Varoufakis joins us now live from Athens. Well, in the last hour, Mr. Varoufakis, the German finance minister said he thinks your country could very soon default. Is he wrong?
John, you will permit me not to comment on what my very good colleague from Germany has said. The whole point about these negotiations is to avert moves and developments which will be detrimental to every side on the European continent, including those like Britain who are not part of the Eurozone. So we are working very hard to avert a negative outcome, to converge upon common ground, and there's plenty of common ground. It's a very rich common ground, very fertile common ground, on which we can grow and create something that is mutually beneficial.
But I mean, you can leave Germany to one side for a second, because of course the IMF have to be paid on the 5th of June, and that's 300 million or so euros, and even after that you've got a summer in which you've got to pay back billions.
Yes, but all this is besides the point. The point is to come to an agreement that allows Greece to start recovering, properly recovering for the first time since 2008, to develop, to grow, to produce the income that can sustain this society and at the same time help us repay our debts. Everything else is noise. It's a bit like, John, if I were to take an elastic band, wrap it around your arm, pull it sufficiently for you to start losing your blood circulation in your arm and then saying, oh my God, you are facing a gangrene threat.
Yanis Varoufakis, you could be said to have emitted a fair amount of noise yourself just now, because you haven't really taken us any clearer to a point at which it's possible to believe that Greece can survive within the Eurozone over the next 2 weeks.
Of course we can survive, and we will survive. All we need is good faith on both sides, so that we can strike a deal. And it's not just for the next 2 weeks, but for the next 2 years, 2 decades, 2 centuries.
But the brutal...
you accused me, or you insinuated.
The brutal truth is, the other side has the money, you need the money, and in the end, well, you'll have to do what they ask.
Well, what we need is a good deal. What we need is to end the 5-year cycle of debt deflation, and the recession which is crippling the capacity of this nation to function and to repay its debts. And let me be very clear on this. I have made absolutely no inflammatory comment in your program or any other program or any other venue. What I said is this. We are out of the markets. Greece doesn't have a capacity to borrow from the money markets, from private investors. Nevertheless, we're perfectly capable of having a state that pays for its own salaries, for its own pensions, that lives within its means. What we can't do is to keep repaying our creditors when the disbursements from the creditors to us have ceased for more than 8 months now. And those who have seized those payments know that that is the case. Thus, the metaphor, the allegory that I used, which is not inflammatory at all, it's just helpful in informing our audience, our viewers, of the situation as we live through it.
Well, let's just look a little bit further beyond, because are you threatening an exit vote, a referendum on staying or going?
Well, that's an easy question. The answer is no. We're not threatening with anything. We want to stay within the Eurozone. We're determined to strike a deal. For months now, especially the last few weeks, we've been negotiating day and night. We've been extremely flexible. We've been compromising left, right and centre without having any intention of being compromised at the end of the day, in order to strike a deal to stay within the euro and not to default to any of our creditors.
Okay, but you see, you've said to us you cannot borrow because the markets, you can't play the markets anymore.
Yes.
Therefore, surely I have to ask you, can you pay? If you can't borrow, you can't pay.
Well, it is by definition true that a country which is in a loan agreement like we are, the best it can achieve, and we have achieved that through brutal fiscal consolidation and a great deal of sacrifice by the Greek people, what we have achieved is a capacity for our state to live within its means. And John, let me tell you that since I've been finance minister the last 4 months.
Probably feels like that, but I must push you. I must push you. Right. Can you pay?
No, well,
can you
don't
pay?
Need to, because
yes
I'm telling
or no? A yes or no question.
All right. Yeah, well,
5th of June.
For the last 4 months, we repaid 6.5 billion out of the fibre of the Greek state to our creditors. We will try to continue doing this. At some point, we will have to face a dilemma between paying for pensions and paying for creditors. And of course, you know that any responsible government, be it the Greek government, the British government, or any other government, what choice it would make under those circumstances. I don't need to spell it out for you.
I think I see the answer there. Yes, on the 5th of June. You don't seem to be saying no.
Well, I'll put it very succinctly. If we can, on the 5th of June, repay the IMF and pay pensions and salaries, as well as the other obligations that we have to our internal creditors, we shall. If not, we will have to prioritize pensioners and public sector workers.
There is another perspective, however, and this may explain why Varoufakis was not willing to reveal the cards he may be holding. An article appearing on the Alcuin-Bramerton blog page on May 22nd writes, "Has Syriza just become the most powerful political entity in the Western world? Greece's vast debts to international institutions and zombie banks mean that the Syriza government in Athens is now more powerful than the IMF, the ECB, the European Central Bank, and the G7 banking cartel put together. Debt, or credit, which cannot be paid back is never an asset. It is always a liability. And when much of that debt has been fraudulently imposed, debt forgiveness is the logical and only remedy. The Nazi continuum money launderies at the ECB and the US Fed, and the puppet politicians they control, all know that one false move on their part in dealing with the Syriza leaders will bring the whole Western fiat finance system down like a sharpster's house of cards. The house of cards is currently kept standing by covert rigging of the financial Western markets into a counterintuitive bull mode. Any major, unmanageable surprise shock to do with sovereign debt or default, given the transparent oxygen of publicity, will turn bull into bear. The bond bubble will burst. It's all about the bonds. When that bubble bursts, the whole world ends." Bramerton appears to have hit the nail on the head. He also points out that in Greece, Syriza knows all this. The Syriza economics people may be useless at and impatient with vested interest oligarch politics, but in terms of pure pragmatic economics, they are brighter, brainier, and freer than the frightened people across the table from them in Europe. And they have nothing to lose. Anything of value which Greece once had has already been lost to externally imposed everlasting austerity. Syriza has also been talking to Vladimir Putin. He has told them how the world works. They have learned that it is a game of chess, and in a game of chess, sometimes it's the waiting move which kills. Slow the clock down and threaten stalemate. It would seem that this is why Greece has been delaying the game as much as possible up to now, to slow it down. Bramerton continues to outline a series of events. Germany repaying Greece its war reparations damages, an offer by Moscow to help Greece in the investigation of those damages, videos in Greece informing the public of war reparations that are due, German Chancellor Merkel meeting with Putin and apparently not being very happy, Varoufakis making a comment on the 14th of May wishing that Greece still had the drachma currency, and then the following up of an invitation by Russia to allow Greece to join the BRICS alliance. Stay tuned. The game is getting interesting. Putin appears to be teaching Greek PM Tsipras and perhaps also Varoufakis the fine art of pissing off the global cabal and still coming out smelling like roses. In other geopolitical news, we go across the pond to Canada, where something appears to be happening, and although it may not become fully clear how extensive this will be until after the national election in October, it may be starting to happen nonetheless. The people of Canada may just be starting to find some kind of united voice against the crimes and policies of Prime Minister Stephen Harper. What is also very interesting to observe is that several of the mainstream media may now be starting to turn against the Prime Minister also, and it is this apparent media backlash against the Prime Minister that has led to an odd and perhaps even comical irony this week. I'll come back to this in a moment. Let's look at a few other things happening first in Canada this week. CVN has reported recently the election of the New Democratic Party, or NDP, government in the province of Alberta, the home turf of Prime Minister Harper, and also the home turf of many, if not most, of the major oil drilling operations in the country. This alone should be a signal for Harper that his titanic leadership is heading towards the veritable iceberg of truth. The indignation that appears to be finally rising to the surface within the Canadian population has led to a resurgence of the federal New Democratic Party. The people appear to be turning against Harper and his Conservative Party, as well as Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party, for their support of a broad-range piece of legislation known as Bill C-51, which supports greater spying upon Canadians, among other things. Last week, Andrew Mitrovica, writing for iPolitics.ca on 15th of May, stated that Stephen Harper should worry. If public opinion polls are any barometer, support for his so-called anti-terror law, Bill C-51, is fading fast. The more people learn about the bill, the more they loathe it. The latest poll shows that 56% of Canadians now oppose C-51, including a growing number of Conservative supporters. The NDP party has now stated its intention to repeal that bill if it is passed into law as part of its election platform. The problem is that the NDP, although they look like saviors compared to the other, more experienced parties, the NDP may also be a wolf in sheep clothing, because sources suggest that the NDP still support things like free trade legislation, such as the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. Does this mean that they would also support newer agreements, such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership? If so, then this means that the NDP also supports the selling out of Canada to corporate interests. They may get votes on scrapping spying legislation, but what good is that going to be when the country gets sold down the drain to corporate interests that will eventually get the spying and policing legislation back on the table anyway? This week, another trend seems to be developing, and this is the growth of the Green Party. Currently, there is only one Green Party member in the federal parliament, and that is the leader, Elizabeth Bay. Last week, at the Canadian version of the Correspondents' Dinner, May attempted to humorously tribute the recent release of Omar Khadr, a Canadian child soldier arrested in Afghanistan and held in Guantanamo prison. In his recent release, Khadr expressed the kind of behavior that was reminiscent of Nelson Mandela when he was released from prison. He was kind and gracious. In comparing Khadr to Harper's cabinet, Elizabeth May attempted to joke, saying, "Omar Khadr, you've got more class than the whole effing cabinet." Although her entire address was reported as odd or off the rails or some other criticism, she struck a nerve, causing some journalists and people to admit that however odd her attempt was at humor, she was basically speaking the truth. Before this event, a poll was taken in March suggesting that on the West Coast province of British Columbia, the survey gave the Green Party 21% support in BC, placing them just a few points behind the other three parties in a four-way race. That is a startling increase over the 7.7% of the vote the party captured in the province in 2011. In light of continuing developments against Harper, and with May's outspoken comment, it is possible that the Greens will gain even more exposure and support. For Harper, the news just gets worse. On top of recent events that are haunting his government, Steve Sullivan, writing for iPolitics on May 20th, put it very nicely, stating that every time the Harper government crosses a line between what elected governments do and what they must never do, we have to wonder, how much longer can it get away with it? Is the law really just a weapon to be wielded by those with power in order to hold on to that power? Is that all government is for now? When Prime Minister Stephen Harper finds himself in a corner, he digs himself out with whatever tools are available, ethical or otherwise. His methods are limited only by the degree of his desperation. So he shuts down Parliament when the questions get too close to the bone. This is called proroguing. He refuses to allow scientists to talk to Canadians about the research they're paying for, the better to push arguments that fly in the face of science. He drafts a quote-unquote fair election law designed to boost his chances of winning the next election. So far, Harper has limited himself to offending democracy and the law. Now he's rewriting history. Buried in his government's latest omnibus budget bill is an amendment to the Access to Information Act, which denies people the opportunity to make access to information requests for data from the defunct Long Gun Registry. A CBC article on May 16th by Evan Solomon has reported that Canada's Information Commissioner says she has never seen anything like this. Following a long investigation, Suzanne Legault concluded that the RCMP illegally destroyed records related to the Long Gun Registry. Now she's also publicly questioning the federal government's attempt to create a perilous precedent by retroactively rewriting Canada's Access to Information law to absolve the RCMP of wrongdoing. Canada's Information Commissioner tabled a special report earlier this week and revealed that she recommended almost 2 months ago that charges be laid against the RCMP for its role in withholding and destroying the gun registry data. Now, for most listeners, the Long Gun Registry is not important. What is important is that the government is trying to change laws to protect itself when it is convenient to do so. Harper is digging an increasingly deeper hole for himself. In digging that hole, he has become increasingly more dictatorial and also increasingly more distant from the people he is allegedly sworn to serve. He is also less accountable. Glenn McGregor on May 19th in a National Post article reported that Stephen Harper has skipped out on answering opposition questions in the House of Commons more often in 2015 than in any other year he has been Prime Minister. Harper has attended only 35% of the daily question periods in 2015, his lowest rate for any year since 2006, according to an analysis in the Ottawa Citizen. The trend reflects what critics say is an increasingly inaccessible Prime Minister who rarely holds news conferences and who, last week, signaled he would not participate in election leaders' debates organized by a consortium of broadcasters. Now he has less time for question period, where, by convention, the Prime Minister is held to account by MPs for his government's performance. Further reflecting that trend, Harper is now refusing to participate, as mentioned moments ago, in this debates for the upcoming election. And this brings me back to the odd irony this week, mentioned moments ago. Steve Marr, in a May 21st article in the National Post, writes, "The NDP, Liberals, the Green Party and the Bloc Québécois agreed on Thursday to debate one another on TV during the fall election campaign, but the Conservatives say they won't participate. This sets up the possibility that the Conservative and Liberal leaders will not meet in a debate, the first time in decades that hasn't happened during an election campaign. The debates are set up by the Broadcast Consortium representing Canada's major broadcasters and also the group that is best able to present the debates to a majority of Canadians ahead of an election. Harper is desperately trying to avoid being held publicly accountable for all that is going on. Oddly, here is what happened. A quote that appeared on the 24news.ca website and was originally part of the National Post story but now appears to have been removed, stated the following. The Conservatives have said that Prime Minister Stephen Harper will not participate in a debate organized by the consortium, denouncing the consortium as a cabal. The media that used to play his game and who now appear to be turning against him are suddenly the ones being labeled as a cabal. Many listeners will no doubt see the humor and irony in this. The Canadian political system, like the British and some others, is a flawed practice in democracy. Andrew Coyne, in a National Post story, summarized the British election, the electoral system, which is also Canada's. He describes in his article what is called the first past the post system, where the winner is not the party or candidate with the majority, but just the one with the most votes. It is a system like this that allowed Harper to allegedly steal the last election with vote rigging. Canada, the UK, and other countries are faced with this anomaly in their electoral systems. Coyne writes that if party standings were more closely related to the popular vote, as under proportional representation, parties would have equal incentive to compete for votes in every part of the country, as voters in all parts would have the same incentive to turn out to support them. Likewise, we have all grown used to being urged to vote strategically for fear of splitting the vote. And that means voting for a party we don't much care for, as opposed to the party we actually support, in order to prevent a party we detest from getting in. We think of this as normal when it's anything but. Again, it's just a trick of the first past the post system. Under a proportional system, there's no such thing as vote splitting, since the number of seats a party gets is in proportion to the number of votes it gets. There's no way for one party to benefit because the others were divided. Speaking as a Canadian for a moment, I apologize to the people of the world for what this unrepresentative government is doing to the people of the world and to our planet. For a leader like Stephen Harper, he is used to getting his way, even if he must sometimes do it unlawfully. He is used to dealing with people who are dazzled by dollar signs in any deal. Perhaps not anymore. A CBC article on May 7th has reported that the first of 3 votes on a natural gas benefit offer worth over $1 billion has been unanimously rejected by a First Nation on British Columbia's northwest coast. All of the more than 180 eligible voters at a meeting in Port Simpson stood up to oppose the plan to build a liquefied natural gas pipeline and terminal in their territory, said Lax Kw'alalam's band member Malcolm Simpson. A Canadian company that is mostly owned by another foreign entity from Malaysia is behind the offer. The article continues. Residents have raised concerns over the project's environmental impact, citing the site's problematic location and the threat it poses to the watershed. Too much was at stake to wipe out a whole river, said Sampson, a father of 8 and grandfather of 20. Both supporters and the band council made presentations, and Sampson described the atmosphere at the meeting as very tense. Port Simpson resident Donnie Wesley, who voted no on Tuesday, said his people wanted to send a clear message to the provincial and federal governments that his community takes environmental issues seriously. It was a proud moment for our people, said the lifelong fisherman. We stood our ground. A positive example where the unified voice of a group stood up and refused to be bought out and overrun by corporate commercial interests that do not honor the environment that sustains us and gives us life. CVN salutes the band council for its courage, its integrity, and its service to humanity and our planet. In financial news now, according to new research, European banks are as likely to fail today as they were preceding the global economic crash 7 years ago. Mark O'Burney has reported on the goldcore.com website on May 18th. O'Burney goes on, writing that leading economists say that the European banking system is still highly vulnerable to financial and economic shocks, despite the various policies which have been put in place to protect against such events since the collapse in 2008. According to research by the University of Portsmouth Business School, which was published in the Journal of Banking and Finance, European banks are as vulnerable today as they were in 2008. The research suggests that southern European banks, particularly those of France, Italy, and Spain, are highly vulnerable to failure. It is becoming more openly hinted that a gold standard is going to be a part of the new financial paradigm that is being set up underneath the collapsing paradigm of fiat currency led by the US dollar. There are also signs of increased risks to money that people are holding in their bank accounts. The article continues, frequent readers of our blog will be well aware of the risks posed to bank deposits by a bank failure. While governments have sought to assure the public that their savings are safe due to bank deposit guarantee schemes, they have been working behind the scenes to extricate themselves from that responsibility. The Gold Core website reported last month on how the Austrian government was pushing through an EU law earlier than scheduled, which removes all responsibility of the government for the bank deposits of its citizens. This legislation is due to be rolled out across Europe this year. Longtime readers will be well aware that Irish Finance Minister Michael Noonan is on record as saying, bail-ins are now the rule. Bank deposits are increasingly vulnerable given the risks to the banking system and the likelihood of government reneging on deposit guarantees and of bank bail-ins in the event of a crisis. For those who have been able and willing to see the bigger picture unfolding, this scenario is not exactly a surprise. Egon von Greyers, who was interviewed by King World News on May 14th, offered a bit of a fear-mongered perspective as to how he sees things playing out. It could be argued that those who are attached to the old system and who stand to lose a lot with the collapse of the old system will do anything to keep it alive. In introducing von Greyers, King World wrote the following: "Today, the man who has become legendary for his predictions on QE, quantitative easing, historic moves in currencies, and major global events, warned King World News that the U.S. launch of QE4 this year is going to trigger a frightening bond and currency collapse, hyperinflation, and skyrocketing gold and silver." Now, for the purpose of learning how to discern between meaningful info and that which is not meaningful, there are changes coming, and that is now being openly spoken about and written about. What is the general energy of the article? Is it one of fear, or is it one of positivity? Keep in mind that we are being guided to remember to focus on that which we want to see in the world. Anything else, most likely, is an attempt to prevent that more positive reality from manifesting. The statement focuses on fear only, with no attempts whatsoever to focus on the structures being brought online by the BRICS alliance and the newly created development banks aligned with BRICS. In my mind, there is absolutely no sense in writing a story focused on fear without offering something positive, unless it was the intention all along to create fear. Change does not have to be fearful, assuming that people have been given all the information they need to make that assessment, which has not been the case. Von Greyers has noted that gold and silver are moving up, and in this article he has indicated his personal belief that the US dollar will be the next currency to fall as gold and silver continue to rise. According to von Greyers, the movement of gold and silver will continue upward, but a massive upside move is likely to occur in August and September. In fact, autumn should mark a major reversal in all markets. This will be the beginning of a tremendous fall in stocks, bonds, and the dollar, and big rises in gold and silver. Again, the hints of change are all there, but with no sense of something promising on the other side of this financial event, whatever it is going to be. Sputnik News reported on May 20th that according to Deutsche Wirtschaftsnachrichten in Germany, China is planning to introduce the gold fixing reference price in yuan. Americans fear that China could introduce a new gold standard to displace the dollar. The Sputnik article highlights numerous actions being undertaken by the Chinese government at this time, including the establishment of an international chamber of commerce in the free trade zone of Shanghai, the repatriation of gold to China held by Chinese mining and refineries, as well as the lifting of restrictions on the import and export of gold to facilitate domestic trade. With the banking cabal beginning to show signs of making moves on the savings of people within banks, many will begin to question if there is any place that is truly safe. Along with the fact that the above sources are not even addressing the solutions, they are also not mentioning that there are U.S. companies and the World Bank that are ready to work with BRICS despite the game being sold in the media relating to economic sanctions against Russia. According to an article on the geopolitics.co website on May 19th, the site refers to a Sputnik News article indicating that the World Bank is open for cooperation with BRICS Bank. A senior advisor on BRICS at the World Bank Group, Octavio Canuto, said on Monday. President of the World Bank, Jim Yong Kim, clearly stated that the bank is ready to cooperate with the BRICS in various areas, Canuto told RIA Novosti. In another article along the same theme on the website, U.S. businesses want to work with Russia despite Western sanctions against the country and are preparing some new projects that will be announced at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum that will take place on June 18th to the 20th. This, according to the head of the economic section of the Russian Embassy to the United States, Mikhail Kalugin, told Sputnik. We are speaking with the U.S. business community with different companies discussing their projects in Russia, Kalugin said on the sidelines of the third annual Doing Business with the BRICS conference in Washington on Monday. That alone, the third annual Doing Business with the BRICS conference, should suggest that Washington has long been familiar with what is going on with regards to the BRICS alliance and also regarding business with Russia and with China. I can assure you that most of these companies working in Russia want to stay in Russia and they want to do business with us in spite of any sanctions, he added. Kalugin explained that Russia sees such developments as a good sign. So there's a lot of confusing info. The media is trying to sell sanctions and war to the general public, but behind the scenes it all seems to be about planning for future economic trade. If Russia was really and truly a threat, negotiations such as these would just simply not be taking place. So it is becoming more clear that something else is going on behind the scenes. Until the global banking cabal has been completely removed from the financial and political paradigm of the world, I am not sure if there is a completely 100% safe place to keep money, although gold, silver, and perhaps a few other metals would be worth exploring. There are also some virtual currencies worth exploring also. For those who have been considering purchasing gold but feel that they do not have enough money to buy ounces of the metal, there is an option to purchase grams of gold, and one such company can be found in the show summary for CVN each week. Look for the new photos of various options for gold purchase. One can buy a 1 gram, a 2.5 gram, and a 5 gram card containing the gold. For more information on the program, one can click on the photos and be able to send an email directly to Bethany for more information. As many begin to contemplate the possibility that real global change is in fact beginning to happen, and that we may face a period of time where an uncomfortable transition has to take place, many are no doubt going to go to the first question about personal security. There is some validity to this, but there is also a possibility to consider that humanity is being conditioned to break away from the dis-ease of illness or I-ness, thinking only of oneself, to the cure of wellness or we'll-ness, where humans embrace the idea of we'll work on it together. An article and interview by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC, on May 12th with Paul Kennedy, entitled Why Money Isn't Everything, takes a look at this belief. There are solutions that can be worked on together. What is interesting to note in this article is that Kennedy just might be one of the first mainstream media journalists to hint about the truth of the fiat currency system, in writing that there are many illusions about money. One is that banks create money when it's printed, but money is actually produced through bank debt, when banks loan money to individuals, to governments, or to corporations. Actually, all our national currencies are private creations produced through bank debt. We see money only as a way to buy or sell things or to drive an economy. But across the globe, people are challenging this system, using alternative currencies, complementary currencies, just as effectively. In looking at some innovative solutions around the world, Kennedy writes, the world over, alternative currencies are helping societies solve key issues. There is a garbage currency in Curitiba, Brazil, where garbage is traded for bus tokens. Mayor Jaime Lerner solved a garbage crisis and created a transit system envied the world over, cementing Curitiba's status as eco-capital of the globe. In Japan, there is a caring relationship currency, where good deeds are traded like money, a system that has provided quality care to the fastest growing elderly population in the world, all at no cost to the government. In Canada, there is a sharing hub at the Toronto Tool Library, where Sweat Equity gives access to woodshop space and over 3,000 tools, again at low marginal cost. People are familiar with many of the more regular incentive programs set up by corporations to promote loyalty, although these programs seem to be scaled back more and more, or the conditions of redemption seem to keep changing. The thing about complementary currencies, however, notes Kennedy, is that they are used for social purposes. They can actually pave the way for the democratization of money. Worldwide, from grassroots organizations to municipalities and countries, complementary currencies have aided struggling economies, marginalized people, and the environment. I was unable to download or record the interview in time to air a sample of it for the newscast. For those who are interested in listening to the full 53-minute interview, the link will be in the show summary. The interviewees includes the mayor of Curitiba in Brazil talking about the changes there, and is a man considered to be a visionary in urban planning and development. As mentioned moments ago in the previous story, there is also the option of virtual currencies, and Bitcoin is usually the one that comes first to mind for many. Although for some, the memories of Bitcoin may be painful due to financial losses, the currency was going through its puberty and apparently is beginning to mature into adulthood of the financial world. An article on the nextweb.com website by Owen Williams reported on May 18th that the New York Stock Exchange has announced that it plans to make available a Bitcoin index on the New York Stock Exchange, giving further legitimacy to the cryptocurrency. From today, the 18th, the New York Stock Exchange will feature the Bitcoin index in the NYSE Global Index. It will also be temporarily available publicly on the NYSE's website. The article continues, adding that the index is calculated once a day to 4 decimals and will be published within 2 hours of 4 p.m. UK time, and that would be about 11 a.m. Eastern time. New York Stock Exchange Group President Thomas Farley said that Bitcoin values are quickly becoming a data point that our customers want to follow as they consider transacting, trading, or investing with this emerging asset class. The Bitcoin index pulls data from Coinbase, in which the New York Stock Exchange happens to have made a minor investment earlier this year. In general news, a very good development is coming out of France this week. Although, as is often the case with many good actions, there are also some possible consequences that have not been considered along the way. The good news, however, is that the French government, in a unanimous vote on May 21st, will ban large supermarkets from destroying unsold product and be forced to donate the goods to charities or farms. According to an RT article, under the new legislation, large supermarkets, those measuring 400 square meters or more, will be forced to give any unsold but still edible goods to charities which can serve it to those less fortunate. This includes products that were packaged wrong or damaged, or that are past a recommended use-by date but are not dangerous to eat. Food that is past a firm expiration date would go to farms to be used as animal feed or compost. It's scandalous to see bleach being poured into supermarket dustbins along with edible foods, said Socialist MP Guillaume Garot, a former food minister who sponsored the bill, as quoted by Agence France Presse. A deadline has been established that by July of next year, supermarkets must have contracts in place or face fines of up to €75,000 or 2 years in jail. There are at least a couple of potential challenges with the new legislation. The article continues, writing that Jacques Crissel, head of the French Federation for Commerce and Distribution, said it is a mistake to only target big supermarkets, which represent only 5% of total food waste. He added that such large stores are already the preeminent food donors, with more than 4,500 stores having signed agreements with aid groups, The Guardian reported. Another problem comes from the side of the charities, who may not have the resources or the infrastructure to deal with the vast increase of product coming their way. RT adds that the new law, which will also introduce an education program about food waste in schools and businesses, is part of an effort by Paris to halve the amount of food waste in the country by 2025. What is important here is to not necessarily focus on what is bad or challenging because of this. What is most important is that a positive step has been taken by a government to force some positive change. There may be some challenges, but there will always be people coming along with ideas, suggestions, and innovations that can help to deal with any challenge that is ultimately for the highest good of all. It is perhaps a great first step compared to other countries. And yes, perhaps more restaurants could get involved. What this represents is a beginning shift of consciousness, and any great idea has the potential to grow exponentially if people are willing to act and serve for humanity and the planet. For followers of the Eurovision Song Contest, the grand final will be taking place this Saturday, May 23rd. The semi-finals are now complete, and the Eurovision.tv website has posted the 27 finalists for the grand final, being held in Vienna, Austria. One song has created a bit of a stir, and this is the song from Hungary. According to the Desert Peace blog site, Israel is protesting Hungary's Eurovision entry, which includes condemnation against Operation Protective Edge and mentions the number of Palestinian children killed during the 2014 Israeli military campaign. Israeli ambassador Ilan Mor turned to the Hungarian Broadcasting Authority and expressed his country's reservations over the planned song and asked that the problematic segment be removed. The Eurovision Song Contest will be held in May in Vienna, as mentioned moments ago. Hungary's song this year, Wars for Nothing, will be performed by a group of 3 singers led by Hungarian singer-songwriter Bogi. The song has an anti-war message focusing on the victims of violence and wars in the world. One of the captions in the song's video refers to Operation Protective Edge, stating, 2014 Gaza, 2/3 of the victims were civilians, including more than 500 children. Although Israel isn't mentioned by name in the song, Ambassador Moore asked the Hungarian authority to remove the sentence about Gaza, explaining that it is seen as an inconvenient political message against Israel. It remains to be seen as to whether the controversial lyric will be included in the final performance. A link to the Eurovision website for those unfamiliar with the annual music tradition will be posted in the show summary. Over to tech news for the week. We're taking a look at a story that is promoting not only renewable energies, but also using those energies to power a floating farm. According to an article posted on the Minds.com website on May 19th, from the design practice Forward-Thinking Architecture come a set of modular floating farms that harvest sunlight and rainwater, as well as desalinate salt water and grow thousands of tons of vegetables every year. Inspired by Chinese floating fish farms, these rectangular units measure 200 by 350 meters and can connect with other modules via walkways. The usage of waterways is a great complement to the farming industry because it makes farming available in so many more locations. It reduces the need to import food by localizing growth and incorporates rivers and lakes as viable farmland. Each unit is comprised of 3 levels. The bottom floor focuses on aquaculture and water desalination, the first floor on hydroponic crop cultivation, and the roof is adorned with solar panels, skylights, and rainwater collectors. Assuming that the units perform as designed, the statistics are impressive. The article writes that each module is anticipated to make 8,152 tons of vegetables every year and bring in 1,703 tons of fish. The modules then connect into a grid and can scale up into huge farms, producing local food for entire cities. Lucy Wang, writing for Inhabitat.com on this story, added that the Smart Floating Farms, or SFF, are designed as smart and fully automated systems that combine solar energy, hydroponics, and aquaculture. According to the architects, the commercially viable SFF project was envisioned with existing, well-tested materials and technologies. The farms would be installed in nearby water bodies to reduce reliance on imported food and the number of food miles traveled. According to the website for the Floating Farms Initiative, there is a wide array of foods that could be produced, focusing mostly on leafy greens, vegetables, fruits, herbs, and, as mentioned, certain kinds of fish. The solution represents a great possibility for creating localized industry while providing local jobs and local solutions. In a separate but related story, another form of renewable energy is undergoing an overhaul in its design. An article on the ScienceAlert.com website on May 18th reports that a Spanish company called Vortex Bladeless has come up with bladeless wind turbine technology that seeks to provide more energy for less and address the criticisms aimed at traditional wind farms, particularly where wildlife is concerned. According to Vortex Bladeless, just by ditching the blades, and all moving parts, in fact, they will save around 40% of the energy cost of regular wind turbines, largely cutting down on maintenance costs. Since the Vortex doesn't have moving parts or gears, it should last longer and it won't require periodic lubrication. This according to Dante D'Orazio from The Verge, as he reports. The simpler design also means that manufacturing costs are about half that of a traditional wind turbine. The units, according to the article, function the following way. Like traditional wind turbines, the bladeless variety still needs to capture kinetic energy and convert it to electricity. But instead of using a blade, it uses a phenomenon known as vorticity, which produces a series of spinning vortices in the surrounding air. The team at Vortex Bladeless designed their 2.7-meter high cones specifically so that these vortices would accumulate simultaneously all the way up their length. The article quotes Liz Stinson, writing for Wired magazine, as reporting that in its current prototype, the elongated cone is made of a composite of fiberglass and carbon fiber, which allows the mast to vibrate as much as possible. An increase in mass reduces natural frequency. At the base of the cone are 2 rings of repelling magnets, which act as a sort of non-electrical motor. When the cone oscillates one way, the repelling magnets pull it in the other direction, like a slight nudge to boost the mast's movement regardless of wind speed. The first prototype is due out later this year. Now, how much more beneficial could these units potentially be if they were made out of hemp? There are, of course, numerous other types of wind generators to explore, including smaller and arguably more productive and healthy horizontal and vertical blade wind turbines. The internet is full of options that would provide ideal solutions for communities seeking to become more self-sustaining. As always, the main reason why technologies such as these do not see the light of day is because there are forces controlling the government process in all local communities, and this emphasizes, once again, the importance for people to push for change at the local levels, to apply self-sustaining technologies for communities without the external controls of individuals and multinational corporations, as well as larger governing bodies. Regardless of the challenges, the rate in which new ideas are rapidly coming suggests at least two things. One is that there are abundant ideas and technologies coming out that have the potential to change our planet almost overnight. And two, the forces that have long been suppressing ideas and technologies for the benefit of humanity and the planet are losing their power, for they seem unable to stop all the ideas whose time have now come to be brought into service. Finally, in health news, we start with a look at yet another major retailer that is apparently demonstrating that the company is listening to its shoppers and is seeking to cater more to them. The movement by restaurant chain Chipotle away from genetically modified products is being considered one of the more recent examples. According to an article by Lynn Griffith on the Raw Food World website on May 19th, as demand for healthy foods increase, many communities have created local food co-ops to meet their needs, and larger food chains have begun taking notice. The article notes several food co-ops in the U.S. that have become quite successful, and the smarter supermarket chains are wisely picking up on that trend and adapting. Target is one such company. The article writes that Target will be minimizing popular brand foods and putting an emphasis on small, organic, and natural brands. Target brought together top suppliers and let them know that their popular brands may not be popular at Target stores in the future. At this meeting, representatives from Campbell's Soup, General Mills, and Kellogg were informed that Target retailers no longer want to spend money and effort promoting their products and instead want to feature healthier products. Target projects that processed foods sold by Kraft and others will move down the grocery totem pole, and fresh ingredient gourmet sauces and oils will take their place. Target's CEO, Brian Cornell, has noticed that consumers prefer fresh and healthy food provided at good prices. Cornell believes that consumer requests will leave some of the more popular brands in the lurch in the future. That doesn't mean that mac and cheese is being eliminated, but clearly assortment is being shaped around what consumers are looking for, Cornell said in a recent interview. Although Target has supported the unhealthier food supplier chain for over a decade, the article writes that Target remains unapologetic and feels that the food aisles have lacked the distinctive features that bring consumers to their apparel and home goods sections. They desire to offer distinctive options to shoppers who favor small, organic, and natural brands. This could be considered a solution that started out at a local level and received lots of support and grew to the point where it could have an impact on a larger supermarket. Now that this door has been kicked open, it will be interesting to see how quickly other chains begin to adapt to compete for the healthier food market, and what impact it will ultimately have on biotech companies like Monsanto, Syngenta, and others. The domino effect has the potential to accelerate quickly. We turn now to another product that is more natural and is also considered, at least by some, as being healthy. It is a topic that is controversial, and it is certainly not for everyone, so discernment is required. With the increased focus and recognition of the healing power of cannabis and marijuana, it is worth taking a look at one of the other natural plants that have been used for the spiritual cleansing process. The global cabal has long sought to criminalize substances of this nature because, according to numerous indigenous traditions, these natural plants have helped to facilitate a deeper connection to the spirit world and also to help facilitate an awakening within oneself. This kind of awakening is not what the global cabal wants. They need people who are vulnerable, sick, and disempowered due to numerous addictions, including drugs provided by the cabal, and you will hear a little bit more about this in the next story. Although there are several, this story focuses on the plant known as ayahuasca, or simply Aya for short. It seems that there is a broader recognition of this plant than I was previously aware, for it has its own conference. A declaration was drawn up to help protect this practice from corruption and abuse. According to the website aya2014.com, in September of 2014, approximately 650 people from over 60 different countries attended the World Ayahuasca Conference in Spain. At this conference, a group of 40 scientific, legal, and public policy experts met to discuss how ayahuasca drinking practices can be better understood, respected, and protected as international interest in the brew spreads in the 21st century. The conference formed an expert committee for the regularization of psychoactive ethnobotanicals. Every human should be free to choose ways and tools that facilitate healthy personal growth and spiritual development, to overcome mental or physical illness, and to nurture individual flourishing, social bonding, and family life, as well as to cultivate spiritual meaning. The website represents the group's consensus declaration, a call for governments to work towards creating a constructive legal and human rights-based foundation for ayahuasca drinking. The website continues, writing, "For centuries, industrialized societies have been, in general, repressive and intolerant towards plants with psychoactive properties, mistakenly interpreting their use as diabolical, destructive, and addictive. However, recent medical and social scientific evidence shows that this long-standing cultural prejudice is misguided, and plants such as ayahuasca are gaining increased recognition for their potential role in psychotherapeutic processes, spiritual growth, and the improvement of interpersonal relations. For a significant and rapidly increasing population in various parts of the world, drinking ayahuasca is the way people choose to promote spiritual and personal development, overcome suffering, and deepen their relationship with themselves, their families, their environment, and planet Earth. However, to many drug control bodies, such as the International Narcotics Control Board, as well as law enforcement officers, legal prosecutors, and judiciaries of individual countries, in other words, the global cabal, ayahuasca drinking is often mistakenly regarded as a new way to get high, an inauthentic spiritual practice, a destructive drug addiction, and a threat to public health and moral order that requires repressive measures. This is because there is no profit so far for the cabal in this, and it also represents a tool to help awaken humanity further to the crimes of the cabal against humanity and our planet, but also their idea of moral order. Although I personally have not had an opportunity to experience this, people I know who have had this experience report a range of different experiences, and one of the common themes for all was a journey into the darkness of one's being in order to release it and remove it from the body, many times through physical vomiting. I emphasize that this is not for everyone. It requires a lot of inner strength, courage, and determination to want to heal and release one's inner darkness. I have been told that Spirit brings to each individual what he or she needs during the ayahuasca experience, and for some, it may be more intense than others. If you feel you are ready and you think this may be a necessary journey for you at this time, do your own research and learn more about the process and read about the experiences of others to help you determine if you are ready. In this week's FYI segment, Alice Coppers continues with her series on the superfoods, chlorella and spirulina, focusing this week more on how pH, alkalinity, and disease affect our bodies.
You remember last week we talked a little bit about spirulina and chlorella and pH. The optimal pH for our body is 7.325. However, junk food is around 5.5. That is a very big difference. This writer believes that's the cause of our disease. Alkalinity, as you recall, runs from 0 to 10. 5.5 and below is acidic, and 6.0 and above is alkaline. The higher the number, the more hydrogen, hence the term pH, potential hydrogen. Hydrogen is extremely important to our body and has a major effect in how things stick to our insides. I'm going to explain that a little bit. There's a test that you can do yourself. All you have to do is brush your teeth with baking soda and then eat some junk food. And the junk food will stick to your teeth and you can feel it. Then go back and brush your teeth with the baking soda and eat a highly alkaline food. Once you do that, you'll see the difference, and you'll also understand why people didn't use toothbrushes back in the old days. We have another issue of weight loss. Weight loss and pH are directly related. When there are toxins in the body and the organs are clogged, it is very difficult to keep the metabolism, the immune system, to keep everything functioning at optimal levels. Just like in your car. There isn't a race car driver that would race a car with dirty oil in it. It's the same thing for your body. So weight loss is also related to lack of exercise. And in this writer's opinion, what happens is severe lactic acid buildup in the muscles happens when people haven't exercised for a long time. And it hurts to move. And you don't lift your legs and you don't lift your arms because it begins to really hurt the muscles. Exercise is also related to our hormonal levels. It causes testosterone loss because the brain decides if you don't use this testosterone, then I just will make less. The problem with that is you end up bald and your beard ends up not growing right, and there's a problem with libido. Testosterone is a major issue when pH levels are low. Low pH causes hormonal levels to stick. If you have erectile dysfunction, you probably have high blood pressure and you probably have some type of immune disorders, hay fever, allergies, things like that. If you increase your alkaline foods and increase your exercise and keep your pH at a 7.3, these diseases cannot live inside your organism. Currently, if you don't burn up your hormones, they're restored inside a synaptic cleft of the neuron. They're not reused later. In fact, the brain makes less. It's very difficult to get the brain to make more testosterone, or in women, more estrogen. The brain has to exercise and has to really be taken to its limits to get it to increase its hormonal output. We'll talk about that later. If you don't have a 50% raw diet, you probably have a very low pH. 50% raw diet means fresh veggies, not canned, not frozen, not dried. Okay, fresh green veggies, not potatoes, not squash, not fruit. This 50% raw diet is very difficult to attain, even for myself. The algae has been the answer. And for some people, something green and powdered is difficult to swallow. So they make it in pills, or you can put it into capsules. I just mix it in juice. So there are many ways to take it. But a 50% raw diet decreases your risk for disease, decreases your loss of libido and sex drive, decreases your depression, which makes you more sociable. Divorce rates may drop, and people will be less alienated. Also, for the brain, when there are lots of toxins, the brain gets sluggish and anxious because it can't run things correctly in the body, and depression ensues. Depression is a signal to do something different. Extensive research about alcoholism, which is fermented sugar, the most potent kind on our planet. We have several other types of sugars called high fructose corn syrup, and those are also more dangerous than alcohol, according to Dr. Larson. Thus, when alcoholics quit alcohol, they get severe depression, and sugar brings them out of that depression temporarily, but causes high acidosis in their systems and high disease rates. The last thing you want to do is take an antacid, as it does not shut off the body's manufacture of stomach acids. It only encourages more. Depression and pH are also directly related. I want to talk a little bit about addiction and how people get addicted to painkillers. In our society, we don't define discomfort. We only define pain. Everything is a pain. A pain is something that you take a drug for and you immediately get rid of it. That's a very wrong attitude, because pain begins as discomfort, and for a long time you'll have an annoying discomfort and a warning that something is coming. If you choose to do nothing, that discomfort later on will turn into a pain. With discomfort, we can still do our daily living skills. We can still get up and shower and go to work and things. Something like a headache wouldn't stop us from that. But with pain, it stops you dead in your tracks, and you can no longer do your daily living skills. Thus, people go to doctors and require pain medications. Pain medications are highly addictive, and they have severe effects on the body. Number one, making them acidic. Pain medications also make people lethargic. So again, there's that lack of exercise, and the muscles hurt more, and so it's even harder to get them up and moving. If we look at discomfort and we don't allow it to get to pain, we would never need these pain medications. We lack empathy. We have a society that is immersed in pesticides, GMOs, and various other things that destroy our ability to have empathy for another person. And that simply means being able to feel what that person feels. Oxytocin is the human bond hormone, and the ability to have empathy. Psychopaths and sociopaths lack empathy, and we'll talk about Robert Hare's book next week.
FYI, for your information, is offered on CVN and is researched and written by Alice Coppers. The opinions expressed are her own and may or may not necessarily reflect the opinions of CVN. As always, it is up to each individual to research and determine what is ultimately best for oneself in each moment, as not every health solution will provide the same benefits at the same time. Alice's email address will appear in the show summary for those having questions. And in this week's Final Words, arguably, the scariest words that can be received by one who is in the process of awakening to oneself and all that is happening in the world are these words: go within, or look within yourself, or any variation of those words that instruct an awakening soul to address, release, and heal all that is within oneself. I can say this from the perspective of what I have personally felt at times in my own journey. Awakening people will understand the importance of manifesting inside oneself that which one seeks to experience in the outer world. As Gandhi has said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. For all of us, at some time or another, we are going to have to come face to face with our inner darkness without denying and suppressing it in order to release it. For Star Wars fans, this was seen in Luke Skywalker in his final confrontation with Darth Vader, who was also his father. Did Skywalker choose to surrender to anger and darkness, or did he choose the higher path? I'd like to share some excerpts from a message this week from Dr. Suzanne Lee. For new listeners, Dr. Lee receives messages from one member of our galactic families, known as the Arcturians. If it is hard for you to accept the source, that is perfectly okay. Just allow yourself the open mind and heart to feel the message. Regardless of the source, a message shares energies that can be rejected, or they can be felt and received by anyone choosing to do so. The essence of the message is this: now is no longer the time to continue to deny the feelings and experiences of pain and darkness in our past. It is necessary for these energies to be felt and dealt with in order to move forward with one's healing and growth. What we resist persists, and it is getting increasingly harder for lower vibrations to remain hidden. Here is part of what Dr. Lee shared with her readers this week. It is the now for all of you, our grounded ones, to be your true multidimensional self. Yes, forgetting disturbing perceptions and experiences was often your only protection during the dark times of Gaia, but this reign of darkness is coming to a conclusion. You, our brave emissaries to Gaia, have had to hide your light, but now you can begin to be yourself and live your mission. Now that the light is brighter than the darkness, you can more easily perceive and thus release the illusions that you have had to tolerate and live through for myriad incarnations. Worse yet, you fell into that darkness and believed what the darkness told you. In other lives, you remained connected to yourself, but often were punished, tortured, or murdered for being different than the ruling darkness. Those lives left deep scars on your etheric body, which you have been healing in your present incarnation. However, in order to fully heal these wounds, it is best to remember them. This remembrance can be quite traumatic for your third-dimensional consciousness. We see that many of your 3D minds are whirling with the remembrance of the myriad expressions of your multidimensional self. However, it is the mission of many of you to inform the masses of the fact that reality is multidimensional and that everyone has myriad incarnations on different dimensions, realities, and timelines. How can you heal that which you do not even know? This unconscious darkness acts like an illness that is denied so long that it is extremely difficult to heal. You are your highest light, and you are your deepest darkness. If you cannot embrace, accept, unite, and unconditionally love your own darkness, how can you heal the darkness around you? How can you do for others what you cannot do for yourself? Remember, darkness is just a frequency. There are those who resonate to the lower dimensional signature frequency of power over others. On the other hand, the ascended ones resonate to the higher dimensional signature frequency of power within self. Individual people can become quite adept at lying, but energy fields can only express the truth of their resonant frequency. Once illusions are identified and released, all that remains is the truth. When you consciously perceive the truth of what has occurred on your planet, your individual self may want to be angry, sad, or frightened. Your individual self may want to blame someone because you cannot forgive yourself for not knowing what was really happening. Because of that possibility, we wish to remind you of the life stories of all Earth's ascended masters. These brave ones meditated, suffered, and served others, and went deep inside their self again and again to confront all their inner darkness. Beloved ones, you can only project onto your reality what you find within yourself. Therefore, remember those who have projected out darkness could only find darkness within. The cabal that you have feared and hated lost all contact with their own inner light. Therefore, they tried to steal it from others. But light cannot be stolen. Light is free for all to receive, but one can only receive it if they believe they deserve it. Please use your wonderful gift of imagination to think of how it must feel to believe that you do not deserve light. Imagine how it must feel to be so detached from the light that you think you can steal it from another. The Ascended Masters did not just confront the darkness around them. They first confronted the darkness within them. Because they found, healed, loved, and released all their inner darkness, they only had light within them. With only pure light within, they only projected pure light out into their world. I would like to add a couple of my own comments here. Moments ago, Alice Coppers spoke of humanity lacking empathy, the ability to feel the pain of others. This is worthy of reflection here. As well, regarding the Western attempts to put down Islam, it is my belief that the confrontation of one's inner darkness is the true meaning and interpretation of the word jihad, and the Western media is seeking to negatively portray this word to scare people from the importance of winning that inner battle to create a better external world. Lee continues, if a being trapped in darkness wanted to kill them to extinguish their light, could they respond with unconditional love? Could you? Can you? Can you respond to fear and anger with light and unconditional love? Your instant response is likely yes, but can you look these beings in the face and say, I forgive you, as you know not what you do? Please take the remnants of your time on the third dimension to look at the darkness within that which appears to be separate from you, and decree, I unconditionally forgive you. The full words and content of Lee's message is in the link in the show summary for the final words. Gary Zukov, in his book, Seat of the Soul, shared that a soul that is committing violence is hurting deeply, for a soul that is healthy and balanced is incapable of harm. In Tomorrow's God, Neil Donald Walsh reminds us that there is no such thing as an enemy. There is only a part of you existing in contrast to another part of you. Are you one who seeks global peace by seeking punishment against those who have enslaved us and destroyed our planet? Would you be willing to forgive leaders and members of this global cabal as long as they surrendered their power, their financial windfalls, and their control of the planet? If history is to reflect how humanity created a new peaceful earth, which story would you rather be honored and remembered for? One who sought violence in the name of peace, or one who modeled and exemplified the being of peace? Create a wonderful week until our next Moment of Now. So, that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is a part of the Inlight Universal group of programs. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary on the blog at cosmicvisionnews.com, on CVN's Facebook and Scene pages, CVN's YouTube channel, and also on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that it takes nothing to join the crowd. It takes everything to stand alone. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosures unfolding all around you. Namaste.